And let me bring in Neel Mohani, who is the professor of economics at Stanford University. Professor Mahoney, how do you see White House trade advisor Peter Navarro's Brahmin's profiteering, quote unquote, comment, which is, of course, being criticized as casteist? I'm looking at what exactly is the perception that the US trade policy is sending, or the message that is being sent by the policymaker, especially when tariff negotiations were already strained?
So look, the United States and India have a critical partnership, which is becoming even more important as the US seeks to diversify and de-risk from China. And I think comments coming out of the White House just underscore the mistakes the administration has made in bungling this critical relationship.
Okay, does this style of framing complicated, serious debate over economic economic impacts of tariff, especially in academic and policy circles, how is this being viewed?
Look, the fundamentals of the relationship between the US and India are strong. There's shared values, the two largest democracies, deepening economic ties. In Silicon Valley, where I sit, there are many Indian immigrants who have leading positions as engineers, as developers, and as executives. But the rhetoric is not harmful. And as we've seen, it is, pushing India to explore other opportunities.
Yes, because that pushing India away from its 25 years long relationship with United States was evident, something which we saw play out at the SCO summit in Tianjin. How do you watch that imagery? The Tianjin moment,
So
as it
look,
is being called.
I think the administration is bungling this critically important partnership. And the events unfolding right now are just underscoring the mistakes the administration is making.
Yes, and Professor Mahoney, Donald Trump's 25% tariff, in fact, targets Russian oil, but India maintains a policy of energy diversification. How might such US tariffs affect India's strategic autonomy in energy sourcing and its long-term bargaining position with both Washington and Moscow?
So look, I think the Trump administration and the global community uh, have a important rationale in cutting off resources to Russia to stop funding Putin's war machine. And it's completely appropriate for the US to use carrots and sticks with their partners to encourage them to consume less Russian oil. But tariffs and the 25% secondary tariffs are a very blunt instrument with collateral harm on everybody from the US consumer to US producers that buy intermediate imports from India to millions of Indian firms that have invested in being part of a China plus one strategy for the United States.
And even as the talks are ongoing, of course, the trade talks between India and United States, there is a statement which has come in from Donald Trump, which of course is being seen as and read as him addressing his domestic audience, where he has said that the few people understand that we do little business with India, but they do a tremendous amount of business with us. Then he goes on to say that it's a totally one-sided relationship which has been there for decades. How is this really impacting India-US deal talks, and would you see this as a case of missed opportunity now?
Look, I think the partnership is critically important, and trying to exert maximum leverage to get the biggest deal you can get is not in the long-term strategic interests of the United States. So I think the Trump administration needs to sort of take a step back and think about how they can maintain and build the critical relationship with India.
Okay, from an economic policy standpoint, do you see the breakdown in trade talks between India and the US primarily as tariff driven, or were there deep structural divergences, particularly with the new administration, the Donald Trump 2.0?
Look, I think tariffs are probably the biggest geopolitical and economic mistake that the administration has been making from an economic perspective. Right? Tariffs are just horrible economic policy. They raise prices for U.S. consumers. They harm U.S. producers that rely on inputs from around the world. They harm uh, companies in our partners that have been investing in supporting trade with the US. So all of that is bad policy. And I do think from that bad policy, you generate these geopolitical rifts. So my hope is that the administration sees the events unfolding in China as a wake-up call to reevaluate their trade policy. But to be honest, I'm not too optimistic.
Can there be really a re-evaluation when Donald Trump takes to Truth Social to make those comments which are being seen as outrageous? He has gone on to say that Indian economy is a dead economy.
Yeah, look, the fundamentals of the relationship between India and the United States, I think, are still strong. India is on their way to being the third largest economy in the world, and it's critical that the United States maintain and build those relationships. Um, look, I don't understand uh, the administration's approach to foreign policy, including the use of rhetoric on social media. And I'm hoping that there'll be work to repair the relationship because it is critically important.
And is it really appropriate to take to Truth Social and announce trade policy at a time when the trade talks are underway?
Look, different leaders have different styles, and it certainly wouldn't be the style that I would advise a policymaker if I was asked for counsel. But Trump has been very effective using social media, and so he, as the president of the United States, he is allowed to use his own style of communication.
All right, Professor Mahoney, my last question. How do these broader tariff policies risk alienating potential strategic partners like India while strengthening their economic engagement with other blocs, which we are seeing? India is looking at newer partners, looking at re-engagement, particularly at the SCO, which we witnessed.
No, that is exactly the concern. Along with raising prices in the United States, that tariffs create geopolitical harm, and all of the work that the United States has been doing, being a trusted partner to our allies throughout the world, is being slowly undone by these tariffs that are pushing our partners into, I think, relationships that don't serve the long run interests of the United States.